To the Apache, it is Besh Ba Gowah, metal camp. 7 centuries ago, a small city of stone stood here. It was home to an amazing people who developed a civilization long before the arrival of the first Europeans. Today, we call them the Salado, but we will never know what they called themselves. By the arrival of Columbus, the last traces of their culture faded into the fabric of time. Few ruins in the Southwest have produced such a wealth of artifacts and understanding as Besh Ba Gowah. Yet still, the Salado remains somewhat of an enigma to archaeologists. Besh Ba Gowah is located in the heartland of the ancient Salado, the Tonto Basin and the lands around the tributaries of the Gila and Salt Rivers. The region was first occupied around the year 550 by the Hohokam, farmers and desert dwellers from the south. Here they found a home in the high desert of Globe, Arizona. The land provided almost everything the Hohokam needed to survive. Wood for fires and construction of their pit house villages came from the banks of streams and the flanks of nearby mountains. Pinyon pines yielded nuts. Desert plants such as the prickly pear gave them food, and the agave gave them fiber for their baskets and mats. Some baskets were coated with pine pitch to waterproof them. Pinal Creek was a reliable source of water in this arid land. The pioneering Hohokam settlements in the high desert remained isolated from the heartland of the Hohokam culture. Through time and contact with other peoples, such as the Pueblo building Anasazi to the north, the ancient Hohokam farmers began to adopt new ways of doing things. Their lives changed, and they became a distinct culture, known today as the Salado. Besh Ba Gowah was, in many ways, a typical Salado settlement. Life was lived on 3 levels. On the ground level were 146 rooms. Small rooms were probably used for storage. Some were workshops or living quarters, and certain larger rooms were ceremonial chambers. These rooms were holy places and meeting rooms used for religious ceremonies. The Pueblo had 61 second-story rooms. Most were probably living quarters. Doorways were small, and many rooms were accessible only by ladders. The roofs were constructed with log frameworks overlaid with woven yucca mats and plastered with mud. The 3rd level of occupancy was the rooftops. From observations by early explorers and historic photographs of Southwest Pueblos in the 1800s, we know that much of day-to-day life was lived outside, in central plazas, Pueblo courtyards, and rooftops. Besh Ba Gowah also had 3-story buildings, but we are unsure of just how many. We do know that the Pueblo homes that we now see were not the first structures to be built on this site. Almost 500 years before Besh Ba Gowah, around the year 750, the Hohokam scooped out shallow depressions for their oval-shaped homes, made of wood and brush. Construction of the Besh Ba Gowah Pueblo began in 1225 and continued off and on until about 1400. The cobble and mortar walls were plastered and smoothed with adobe when the Salado lived here. At its peak, Besh Ba Gowah was home to perhaps 350 people. They were hunters and gatherers, living off the land, and they were also farmers. They dug irrigation ditches and also nurtured their crops of corn, squash, and beans with water from Pinal Creek, potful by potful. The Salado grew cotton, though they probably imported cotton from the desert-dwelling Hohokam as well. Among the finds at Besh Ba Gowah are bits and pieces of finely woven cotton cloth made on hanging looms. The Salado used dyes to create colorful clothing and designs. Salado pottery evolved over the years. At first, pots were utilitarian and plain. large storage pots were fired to a mottled red-brown. Sometimes borrowing techniques and designs from other peoples, the Salado became master potters in their own right. Their art culminated with a multicolored Gila polychrome pots. They produced intricate geometric designs, occasionally combining them with animal forms. Their pottery included bowls, small effigy figures, pots, mugs, and an assortment of containers used for holding fluids. The Salado experimented with different designs and shapes, including donut-shaped canteens. Pottery was used in cooking and storage. Slab-lined depressions in the ground were used as underground storage pits for food. Other pits were hearths. For a long time, the Salado maintained good relations with other Southwest peoples. Besh Ba Gowah was part of a prehistoric trade network which extended for thousands of miles. Shells used for ornamentation came to Besh Ba Gowah from the Gulf of California, the Pacific Coast, and even the Gulf of Mexico. Hohokam rectangular stone pallets were found at Besh Ba Gowah. Perhaps they were trays, or plates, or pallets used to grind ingredients for paints, or did they have a purely ceremonial purpose? We don't know. The trade network at Besh Ba Gowah extended as far as tropical Mexico. Macaws were valued for their plumage, and evidence of this bird is found throughout the Southwest. Copper bells from central Mexico were traded to Besh Ba Gowah, even though the Globe area has one of the richest copper deposits in North America. The Anasazi Pueblo builders greatly influenced the Salado in architecture and pottery styles, and traded turquoise to the Salado. But the extensive trade and good relations between peoples of the Southwest began to break down. Drought came to the Southwest. To the north, the Anasazi were ravaged by a 24-year-long drought, from 1276 to 1299. With scarce food supplies, warfare erupted. Social upheaval spread across the Southwest. The 1300s were a time of strife for the Salado. It may just be that Besh Ba Gowah itself is a result of this troubled period. At the heart of the pueblo is a plaza. It was a meeting place and also the cemetery for the village. The only known entrance to Besh Ba Gowah is a long, narrow corridor which opened onto the central plaza. It was roofed and was once a dark tunnel-like passageway. Why? Perhaps for ceremony, or maybe it was made for defense. Besh Ba Gowah may have been a fortified town, an outpost of civilization in a hostile world. The nearby Gila Pueblo was destroyed in a raid, possibly by the people of Besh Ba Gowah. Competition for the life-giving water of Pinal Creek was fierce. In this time of drought, the Salado turned against their neighbors, against themselves. By the year 1400, it was all over. The Salado abandoned the entire region and moved on. Besh Ba Gowah remained a ghost city for a century or more, unvisited until the arrival of the Apaches to this land. Feared warriors, the Apache were the wanderers of the Southwest and never called one place home. It was the quest for riches that would again bring permanent residents here. First silver and gold, and then copper. In 1876, the boom town of Globe became a mecca for prospectors. The Apache called it Metal Camp, Besh Ba Gowah. To the Apache, the ruins at Besh Ba Gowah were a mystery. To the prospectors in the new city of Globe, the ruins were a curiosity. But to the first archaeologists to explore Besh Ba Gowah, the ruins were fascinating. In the late 1800s, Adolf Bandelier traveled across the Southwest surveying Indian ruins. On May 18, 1883, he explored and mapped Besh Ba Gowah. But it wasn't until the Great Depression and the government-funded projects of the WPA that Besh Ba Gowah was thoroughly excavated. Archaeologist Irene Vickery headed up the digs from 1935 until her death in 1940. In the war years and after, Besh Ba Gowah was again forgotten. Exposed to both the elements and vandals, portions of the ancient Salado village collapsed into complete ruin. In 1981, the city of Globe intervened to halt the onslaught of the ages. Arizona state archaeologists re-excavated the ancient Salado city. Concerned local citizens, led by an outspoken member of the city council, Louis Aguirre, were convinced the past should have a place in our future.
My involvement has been from the start as sort of a construction superintendent or just a pusher. I push. I'm well known for that. This is quite a site, and I'll tell you, we've done it with a community support.
Besh Ba Gowah is important not only to the people of Globe, but to all of us. It helps tell the story of ancient America. Now Besh Ba Gowah is preserved. It represents one of the most significant finds in Southwest archaeology. Today, the stone walls of Besh Ba Gowah tell a fascinating story for those who know how to read the rocks.